What is up everyone, it's Josh here from the Architecture Student blog and I am back. I apologise for the slight hiatus that I've had from YouTube. If you've watched some of the previous videos you'll know that I was studying my part 3. I'm hoping this video is going to go some way to explain why I've taken a bit of a break from YouTube. But the good news is I am now, and I can't believe I'm actually going to say this, I am a fully qualified architect. About a week or so ago I completed my part 3, the final part of my university. I'm planning to use this video to explain a little bit about my journey and what I went through, but I realised having completed the course that there's really not much out there to help explain what the different various elements of the course contain, and also what we talk about part 1, part 2, part 3, but it wasn't really until my master's degree I probably fully understood what each of those were and what they entailed. So as well as talking about how I completed architecture school and my journey, I'm hoping to give you a bit of an insight if you are just starting out about what to expect from architecture school. Right, before we get started, I just want to say everybody's journey to qualify as an architect will differ. I did mine part-time, some people do it full-time, some people take extra years out to gain more practical experience. It really doesn't matter how you complete your degree. It is ultimately, this video is just to explain the various different options that are available to you. So to start off with, we've got the study types. As you'll know, I studied my undergraduate degree full-time, so I was at university 5 days a week, all week for 3 years. That was my undergraduate bachelor's degree. For my master's degree, I was fortunate enough, rather than taking a year out, I actually managed to get a placement at a practice that was willing to support me in studying part-time. So I was able to start my master's degree almost 3 to 4 months after completing my undergraduate degree. So that involves being at work 4 days a week, and then you're allowed 1 to 2 days off per week to go to your university lectures, go to tutorials and various different other elements. And more recently, since I completed my master's degree, the RIBA introduced the RIBA apprenticeship, which is a fantastic initiative that really offers some financial incentives to both the practice and the students, because it is government subsidised, so a large portion of the university fees are actually paid for by the government. You do need to find an apprentice provider. Practices can apply to become an apprentice provider, so don't be put out if they aren't already. Speak to the practice, speak to the people there that might have, you know, a say in whether or not they do apply, because it can offer massive financial incentives. It certainly would have helped me not having to pay off my university fees whilst I was working. So those are the various different options you can look at to study. So let's get into now what it entails when you start studying. Your first step into the world of architecture will be your undergraduate degree. Now, because architecture has so many different parts, we would call this the part 1. That is almost building your foundations. It is the basic building blocks, skills, software skills that you'll require. You'll still be doing exciting projects. It's 3 years long, but ultimately the whole point of this course is to build a basic knowledge of what an architect will be doing, just honing your ability to take a brief or create a brief and take it through to completion with a full project. One thing that I'll say with the undergraduate degree, and it was something I had to learn the hard way, is please do not be put off if you have very little understanding of what's going on for the first few weeks. Most schools, colleges, sixth forms, none of them have a specialism in architecture, so unless you've got a family friend that you've been able to do some work experience with, or architecture runs in the family and you understand it with a bit of detail, you aren't actually really going to understand a great deal of what's expected of you when you're at university for those first few weeks. Don't be put off. I was put off. I got quite irritated when I first started university and upset somewhat really, because I sort of gone from school where I sort of knew what I was doing into university where it's very much more independent, and I actually realised I didn't have a clue what I was doing. Stick it out, you're there to learn, be a sponge, absorb as much information as you can, and the sooner you realise, as much as the university is there to help you learn, you also have to learn quite a lot independently as well. You'll really come on leaps and bounds, and just start asking questions. Don't be afraid to ask those in the years above you. If you've got a university that's got a really good open plan studio atmosphere, albeit obviously hopefully we'll be going back to that following COVID now, really utilise that and try and gain as much much knowledge and information as you can from your colleagues. They'll be able to explain, you know, oh, I was in the same position as you and then I learned to do X, Y and Z, and you'll really come a long way. Each university is different, but generally the consensus is you'll have some basic design projects in your first year to kind of get you used to what architecture entails. There'll be some kind of history and theory lectures where you'll be making notes and learning about architecture in general. Your second year develops as sort of, you might have a bit more independence on the projects that you're doing, and then in your final year, I certainly know this was the case for me, I was allowed to write my own brief, design my own project, and that's also where you'll be doing things like your written dissertations. So there'll be sort of written essays to complete. So you really get an overall broad spectrum of what the architecture profession entails, and that prepares you for what is your year out. Once you've completed your undergraduate degree, you'll be doing your first year out. The year out is an opportunity, like most of your other colleagues at university, they'll have been doing the same. Sometimes they do theirs after their second year and then return for their final year. In architecture it's slightly different. We do the year out after we've completed the undergraduate degree, and that is an opportunity for you to really understand what it's like to be in an architecture practice. I think again, very similar to what I said with the undergraduate degree, although you've had 3 years worth of education, and I'd like to think a lot of architecture students would back me up on this, please go into the office with an open mind, because actually what you'll be doing in practice is completely different to what you've been doing at university. Yes, the software skills and your creative design skills, sketching, various other things will transfer into the practice, but actually there is quite a disparity between university and working in practice. Don't let that put you off, but I really would use it as an opportunity to actually make sure that architecture is the profession that you want to go in, because that experience that you get in practice will be what your working life is like. It won't necessarily be akin to what you've been doing at university. That might be a good thing, that might be a bad thing, it's entirely up to you. An undergraduate degree in architecture is a fantastic degree to take on and move forwards with if you wanted to go into other areas of design. But yeah, that's certainly one thing that I'd suggest. And with that year out, just really utilise it for everything that it's worth. Try and take in and soak up as much information from your work colleagues as you can, because what that's going to do is that's really going to prepare you and help push you on. One other thing to mention is, whilst you are working in practice, just try and make sure you can form as many bonds and friendships as you can. I certainly know when I was in practice, I had a colleague that was currently undertaking his part 3, and when I did go back to study my part 2, everyone in the office was very helpful, talking me through my project, trying to give me extra advice. So the more people that you can kind of befriend and work with and become acquaintances, that might help you as you progress through your studies, especially if you're doing it part-time. Obviously, you know, you'll be working with them on a daily basis, but even if you go back full-time, if you've made these connections, I'm sure your former colleagues will be more than happy for you to pop back into the office, go and see them, have a bit of a catch-up and talk them through your project and just get that extra little bit of advice. The one other thing to mention, and I won't go into this in too much detail because there is a lot to cover, is PEDRs, which is your professional experience and development record. I will leave a link in the description below to take you to the RIBA website that explains the PEDR in much more detail. That the PEDR is a written logbook, effectively, or a diary for want of a better word, that you will complete online, that will just give a lot of information about the projects that you've been completing whilst you're on that year out. If you're studying full time, it's incredibly important to make sure that you've got this record, because you will need that to complete your part 3. I'm sure there'll be many people in the office that will have had to have done the same, so if you just pulled one to one side one of the days and just asked about the PEDR, they'll also be able to help explain the process for you. I will leave a link in the description below to the PEDR website, so make sure you go and check that out. But that is one of the most essential things that you will need to do during your year out.
To summarise, don't panic if you're unsure what to do when you first get into the office. University and the working world really do differ. Use it as an opportunity to try and learn from others and soak up as much information as you can. This is real world experience in what you'll potentially be doing for a living, so make sure it's something that you want to continue to explore. And with that, don't be afraid to ask questions of your colleagues. This will help you form new bonds and friendships, and those colleagues in future might be able to help you with your university projects and any other things moving forwards. And finally, just make sure you keep a log of your work using your PEDR, because you'll need this to complete your Part 3 and complete the architectural degree.
Once you've completed your year out, that then leads you on to your postgraduate degree or your master's, which is what we call the Part 2. Now, like I've said before, if you're studying part-time, full-time, it doesn't really make a difference, other than the fact that if you're studying part-time, I know the university that I studied at, they actually lengthen the master's course by 1 year. Now, you might look at that and go, I don't want to make this course any longer, but believe me, it's a massive help, because you're still covering the exact same workload, but it's spread over 3 years, so it just makes it a little bit easier for you to manage your time. Obviously, I can understand not wanting to lengthen the course, but I think the other way to think about it is, if you were to study part-time, you'll then come out of your master's degree with between 3 to 4 years worth of experience, whereas those studying full-time will have only had that 1 year out. So I think you'll be surprised how much of a difference that can actually make to your architectural ability. Now, one thing to say with the Part 2 or the master's degree is, don't feel the need to rush into it. I think that's one of the things that people don't realise with the architecture course. You can study when you want to study. So if you've got a job and you're enjoying your year out and you want to continue that and learn more, you feel like you're actually learning more in practice and want to gain that more experience, stay there for another year. You don't have to go straight back to university. Although it's called a year out, doesn't mean that you can't extend that process. And I think what that will do, if you are going to go back and study full time, is that extra experience is actually going to help you when you start your master's degree, and you'll be more efficient, you'll be a better designer. And although you might feel like you've fallen behind slightly because you've taken an extra year, it doesn't really matter. You're still going to become a well-rounded architect once you've completed your studies. So that's the first thing I'd say, is just only continue with the master's degree when you feel comfortable and confident to do so. The master's degree compared to your undergraduate degree is a lot more independence. There's a lot more onus on yourself as a student. You've decided to come back and study again for a master's degree. This is speaking from my experience at university. The briefs are a lot more vague because it allows you to then develop your own project and do something and explore ideas that you want to explore. There are also professional practice modules, so there's a lot more of the business side of architecture. Again, there's another thesis project, so there's another long 10,000 word written thesis document that you'll need to produce, and then there is the thesis project. They don't necessarily have to be linked, but if you can do that, it might help because you've done a lot of research ready for your final year project. For me, the master's degree, or the Part 2, whatever you want to call it, was a real big learning curve for me. I'd kind of honed my skills in the undergraduate degree, and I felt towards my 3rd year I was finally starting to find my place and really understand what was expected of me. The master's degree just completely pushed that to another level. I really enjoyed the master's degree because I studied part-time. I kind of used university as the opportunity to be very creative and explore things that I really would never get the opportunity to in practice. And it was quite a welcome break from the more kind of strict, regimented design work that I was doing in practice. That's just something to bear in mind. The Masters is a big step up, there's no doubt about it, but if you're that way inclined, you will really enjoy the Master's degree. I certainly did. I got a lot from it. And I came out of it feeling much more confident in my abilities as an architect. Every course really for the master's degree differs, and like I say, because you're expected to work so independently, I mean, these projects literally you are designing yourself. Your tutors will be bouncing ideas off with you, but actually it's your project to develop yourself. I won't go too much into the Part 2 simply because it varies so much. The undergraduate, there's a little bit more of a structure because there's a general consensus of what you need to cover, but with the master's degree, it just can completely differ all over the country, which is again another thing. If you are looking to change universities for your master's degree, make sure you go and check them out, go and look round, ask questions, see what kind of work they're doing, because you can almost guarantee the work that they're presenting on open days and at final reviews is going to be the work that they'll be expecting of the students. So that is the master's degree, or the Part 2 as it's also known, and that will then lead you on to your second year out. Again, like I said before, although it's classed as a year out, generally this is the more lengthier experience period. I find a lot of people don't go jumping into their part 3 once they've done their master's degree. They've studied for 5 years. Let's be honest, people have 5 years of studying is enough for anyone. They've probably had enough of university for a while. They decide to go and find a job, become a part 2 assistant, and really then they can start to progress within the profession, and then it's entirely up to them when they want to go back and study their part 3. Again, something to consider if you are looking to do your part 3 straight away. Please remember your PEDRs, still keep a record. If you've got no intention of doing your part 3 anytime soon, you can be a little bit more relaxed about it, and perhaps the year before you decide you're going to do your part 3, then start pulling together your PEDRs. I believe some universities also allow you to do your PEDRs concurrently with your part 3, which again is another option, but you are obviously just adding to your workload for the part 3. I did it that way, but that was because of the way that I studied. I sort of had to. Ultimately, I didn't really have a choice because I'd done it part-time. I didn't record my PEDR whilst I was studying my master's degree because I didn't want to add to the workload, so I picked I had a year off after my master's and then studied the part 3 shortly after, and did my 2 years worth of PEDR records in that 2 year time span.
To summarise the second year out, this is often a lengthier period of experience because students need to ensure they've got a suitable amount of experience to enrol in the Part 3 course. But bear in mind it is still a time to learn, so again, similar to your first year out, try and soak up as much knowledge as you can, but just be aware that more will be expected of you as a Part 2 assistant compared to the first year out that you undertook. But use it as an opportunity to gain different experience, perhaps try a different practice if you can, or if you're going back to the same practice, if they've got other offices or other sectors, see if you can move around within the practice to gain as much breadth of experience as possible. And then finally, just take as long as you feel necessary before enrolling on the postgraduate diploma or the Part 3. You need to be comfortable with quite a few different elements of the professional practice, so make sure that you are happy before enrolling on the Part 3 and make sure you've got enough of that Part 2 experience.
No doubt during that second period of experience you'll get to a point where you decide, you know what, I actually want to now go and do my Part 3. I want to finish the course, I want to be able to call myself an architect, and I want to be able to become chartered, and that's where the Part 3 or the professional diploma comes in. The way that I'd describe the Part 3, I'll be honest, it's a business course. There's no design whatsoever, there are no projects, it's nothing like, it's completely removed from anything that you'll have done at university beforehand. The real reason for the Part 3 is to make sure that you are an adequate professional to move into the working world as an architect in a chartered practice, which is why the word architect is protected. It really is to test your professionalism. You'll be doing things such as contracts, types of procurement, design and build, traditional, fees, any facet that you've been involved in or overseen whilst you've been working in practice will be covered within the Part 3 course, because ultimately the whole point of the Part 3 is once you've got that certificate you could go and start your own business, so they need to make sure that you are actually comfortable in running a practice and starting your own business. So that is ultimately what the Part 3 is looking to do. It is looking to test your credentials and your professionalism to go into the working world. Again, like I said before, completely removed from the undergraduate and master's degree in the fact that the lectures are very irregular. I mean, where I studied, because it was COVID during the time, it was all remote anyway, but I think the consensus was that you would meet up once every couple of months. It might be for a 3-day stint, or it might be, I think for us, we had it, you know, once every couple of months. We'd have lectures for 3 weeks every Friday, so we'd have kind of lectures together, but they're very separated. It's a lot of written work, a lot of written assignments, then a written exam, as well as an interview. Again, I won't go into too much detail with the Part 3. I think that could be a separate YouTube video on its own, to be honest, because there's so much detail that goes into it. Likewise with the Part 1 and the Part 2. So if you'd like me to kind of talk through in detail each of the individual elements, please let me know in the comments below. That's something that I'll be more than happy to do. I can also share my work from the part 1 and the part 2 course, as well as the part 3. So yeah, the part 3, much more business orientated. It's the final hurdle to sort of get over, but once you've done that, you can call yourself an architect and become chartered, which thankfully, having taken 7 or 8 years now of studying and working, I was very grateful to pass a few weeks ago. So yeah, that is how to proceed through architecture school, how to complete architecture school, and the various different facets along the way. If you've got any questions, if you'd like to know anything else, please let me know in the comments below. Again, I can only speak from my own experience, so please bear in mind that other people you speak to might have had a completely different experience or completely different views on the architecture courses. But again, that's why I like to produce these videos, to start, spark a conversation, spark a discussion. And if I can help anybody, I'll be more than happy to do so. So please let me know in the comments below. Before you go, a very, very quick plug. Please go and check out this book by David DRAZIL'S, 100 Buildings and Architectural Forms. It's been out for quite a while now. This is my fault because of my hiatus from YouTube. I haven't really had a chance to tell you about it. David very kindly sent me a copy of it, and it is absolutely fantastic. As you'll know if you've seen him on Instagram, he's an incredible artist and architect and sketcher, more so than anything. As you'll see in here, there's so many different sketches of how to produce various details, modern architecture, classical architecture. I'll leave a link in the description below, but 100 Buildings and Architectural Forms by David DRAZIL'S, please go and check it out.